It's your man Alex, and in this video I'm going to be showing you guys my take on the best low fade self haircut with some scissor work on top. So let's get right into it. So to get started with this self haircut, I'm going to be using my trimmers. These are my Babyliss trimmers, which are very expensive, but you can obviously use more affordable trimmers as well, like Glaker, Suprint, or whichever ones you prefer. But always use trimmers that have a T-blade because those are more beneficial for putting in guidelines like this and giving yourself lineups as well. Now notice with the first guideline using the trimmers, I'm putting the guideline on the sides of my head directly at the level of my ear. So the top of my ear, it's level with that because I don't want to bring it too high because remember, this is a low fade, so we want to keep that guideline relatively short. Then once we get past the ear, I'm drastically dropping it straight down toward the back of my head, and I'm only going maybe like half an inch below the occipital ridge on the back of my head. Now this step is definitely optional for most people. You don't have to do it if you don't have the necessary tools. But I'm going in with my double foil shavers from Babyliss, and I'm going to completely bald out that bottom portion of my head. So I'm just going in and removing all of that hair, making it baby smooth. Now this is very common and modern, I would say. It's not really my thing because I've got very sensitive skin, so I try not to do it too much, but I was going to a wedding, so I had to do the foil shaver to smoothen it out and make it look fresh. Now going in with the no guard lever open, I'm going to be putting in the first guideline. So I'm going up about 3/4 to 1 whole inch from that first guideline, okay? So the trimmer guideline, I'm only going up about 3/4 to 1 inch from that guideline. Now again, you really want to make sure that you're focusing on utilizing the mirrors appropriately and using that $7 mirror that I tell you guys about in almost every single video to make sure that the left, right, and back of your head are all even, right? You don't want to have a lopsided haircut. Please make sure you double check with the mirrors that all sides when you're putting in the guidelines are even, okay? Now the same exact thing with the number 1 guard lever open. So for this self haircut, I'm putting in all the guidelines first. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that I'm very consistent with the guidelines. So each guard is with the lever open, going up 3/4 to 1 inch. And then you'll notice as well when I get toward the last guideline that every single guideline that you see within my head literally looks almost perfect. So the goal when you're putting in all the guidelines is to make sure that the guidelines are as close to perfect as possible. I know we're human, we all make mistakes, and no one's perfect. But your goal should be to make those guidelines as perfect as you possibly can, because it's really going to help the final result at the end of the self haircut. So real quick, I noticed that my hair length was about a 1.5 guard, and that's why I used the 1.5 guard lever closed, because I'm already starting to blend in that longer length on the top portion of my head. So now moving into the fading portion of the self haircut, I'm going to be using the no guard lever halfway, and this is going to be the first out of like a 3-step process to remove the first hard line. So the first step is no guard lever halfway, and this is going to remove roughly 50% of that first hard line, right? So you're not getting rid of it completely. It's really just a way to soften up the hard line and just make it a little bit blurrier so that you can go in with the next guard, which is the no guard lever closed, and then start flicking out from underneath and going up and hitting the hard line. So like I just said, no guard lever closed is the second step within the fading process to remove the first hard line. Now, these are pretty necessary, or at least I found that these are very necessary. I used to try and play around and skip some of these steps, early on in my days, but I've noticed that these are kind of essential if you want to really get rid of that hard line 100%. So you kind of have to do the 3-step process, or at least for me, I have to do the 3-step process to get rid of that first hard line, which is, for most people, I would assume it's probably the hardest hard line to get rid of. So now going in with the trimmer, this is step 3 of the process to getting rid of the first hard line. So it's no guard, lever halfway, no guard, lever closed, and then trimmer. So we're going back to the trimmer and just using the corners with a flick out motion to get rid of the rest of that hard line. Now I'm going in with the half guard lever open, which is a little bit different than what I would usually do. And I'm just going in and softening up that middle hard line, just like I was doing with the no guard lever halfway, right? So you have to have a step inside your fading sequence where you soften the hard line first with a different position, with a different guard, and then you can go back and remove it afterwards. So I always like to soften up my hard lines first. They always remove about 50% of the hard line, and then I go back, like I went just now, to the half guard lever closed, and now I can go from underneath the hard line and start flicking up, hitting the hard line, and then flicking away from my head at the same exact time. So really what you're trying to do is a nice C motion, like the capital letter C. You're just going in and scooping away. You're going up from underneath, you're hitting the hard line, and then you're flicking away in like a very slight C motion. So if for some reason you're still seeing bulky spots or hard lines within your fade, you can do what I've discovered, which is the thinning shears held in reverse method. And what I've discovered is that when you actually take thinning shears and you flip them around and you directly cut at any bulky spots or hard lines within the fade, they do a phenomenal job of getting rid of any hard lines or bulky spots. And I'm telling you, it really does make the fade come out so much better and just incredibly more blurry than it was before. So I highly recommend you guys perfect this skill set right here to make your fades super blurry. Now going in using the thinning shear over comb technique, all I'm really doing is just softening up the hair by my part line toward the back of my head a little bit higher than the fade, just blending in the fade to that little bit of longer hair on the upper portion of my head. Thinning shears are a super easy tool to use and they barely cut any hair. So if you're maybe afraid of using thinning shears, I promise you, these are the safest way to cut hair with scissors. So now going in and giving myself a crispy clean lineup, I'm going to be using my smaller scissors that I probably got from Target for like $3 or $4 15 years ago. And I use these scissors because it gives me more control and it allows me to be a little bit, it gives me some peace of mind to know that I'm not risking anything crazy on one of the most important parts of my haircut, which is the fringe, the longer hair on top. So I use my scissors because it's a little bit safer, and then of course I use my trimmers to do the vertical bars and the C-cup around my head as well. And now for the easiest part of every self haircut, we're cutting the length on top. No, I'm just kidding. It can be really easy, but you need a system and a process to do it correctly. Now, let me tell you guys the secret sauce. What I like to do is what I call the perimeter guideline. So I pull down the hair, I wet my hair first, and then I comb it straight down and I cut the perimeter of the top length on the top of my head. So I cut all the way around my head, exactly the length that I want it to be on the outsides. Kind of look at it like the gate around your property. I cut all of that around the property, around my head, and then I use that guideline on the outside to then work my way inside my head. All right. So, and then I also look at the top of my head like a grid, like grid paper from math class back in high school, right? We all had grid paper and did like geometry and algebra with it. That's how I look at my head, like a grid. Like there's sections in the back, in the middle, in the front. There's corners in the middle, on the other corners. I look at my head like grid paper, and then I always use the perimeter guideline to tell me exactly where I should be going next. And then, You just take it, it's very simple. Just use the perimeter guideline, start from the outside, work your way inside. I always start from the back of my head, work my way over. Start from the middle of the head, work my way over, and then I do the front, work my way over, and then I always double check my work horizontally and vertically as well. To style my hair, I'm going to be using my mystery clay, which is a 6-ingredient all-natural hair clay that I've been making in my kitchen for many months. This hair clay will be 100% non-toxic and free from endocrine disrupting fragrances, alcohols that dry out your hair, nasty petroleum, carcinogenic dyes, and much more. My hair clay will give you a beautiful high hold matte finish hairstyle that also nourishes your hair at the same time with an all-day hold. This is my take on the best low fade self haircut. Let me know in the comments below how you think the haircut turned out and what other hairstyles you'd like me to try out next. But make sure you leave a like, subscribe to my channel, follow along with my hair clay journey, and check out this video if you want to take your self haircuts to the next level.